Life is structured in patterns, and whether we recognize it or not, we are constantly caught in loops, cycles of thought, behavior, and relationships that seem to repeat themselves. You might notice that certain people, certain experiences, and even certain conflicts have a way of reappearing, almost as if they are woven into the fabric of your existence. Now, why is that? Why do we find ourselves returning to the same person, the same situation, or the same emotions, even when we think we have moved on? It's because life is not random. There is an underlying structure to our reality, and more importantly, our psychology has a way of pulling us toward the things we have not yet mastered. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant thinkers in psychology, referred to this as the process of individuation. He argued that the unconscious mind manifests unresolved conflicts and unmet potentials in our external reality. This means that if something keeps happening to you, it's not just by chance, it's because there is something in that situation that requires your attention. Your mind, often far beyond your conscious awareness, is directing you toward what you need to confront. This is especially true in relationships. People often say, I keep attracting the same kind of person, or I can't seem to escape this cycle. But what they fail to realize is that the pattern exists because they haven't yet learned what they need to learn. It's not the world conspiring against them. It's their own unconscious mind manifesting familiar dynamics, because those are the ones that still hold unresolved questions. If you don't address the fundamental issues that keep drawing you back to a specific person or type of relationship, the cycle will continue. Think about the way human beings develop. We don't learn from success. We learn from failure, from suffering, from confronting the things that challenge us. A child who falls while learning to walk doesn't conclude, walking isn't for me. No, the child keeps getting up, keeps trying until they've mastered it. Life works the same way. If you repeatedly encounter the same type of person or the same relationship dynamic, it's because you haven't yet mastered the lesson embedded within it. Until you do, it will keep happening. And this is where it gets interesting. Your subconscious mind is far more intelligent than you give it credit for. It knows things before you do. It picks up on subtleties, patterns, and deep psychological truths that your conscious mind has yet to process. That's why people experience déjà vu, why they have recurring dreams, and why certain people seem to appear in their lives at exactly the right moment. Your mind is constantly guiding you, pushing you toward growth. The problem is, most people ignore this. They dismiss it as coincidence, or worse, they run from it because facing it is difficult. But here's the reality. You cannot run forever. What you avoid will return. And in relationships, this truth is even more profound. If you feel drawn to someone, if no matter how much time passes, they keep appearing in your life, either physically or in your thoughts, there's a reason for that. It's not just nostalgia, it's not just emotional attachment. It's a sign that there is something unresolved, something unfinished, something that requires your full attention. And if you continue to ignore it, life will ensure that you encounter it again and again and again, until you finally wake up to the fact that it's not a coincidence. The idea that certain people are meant to be in our lives is often dismissed as romantic fantasy. But it's not about fate in the way most people think of it. It's about psychological necessity. If a particular person keeps appearing in your life, there is something significant there. Something that, if properly explored, could lead to profound transformation. But that requires courage. Most people don't want to face the truth. They don't want to ask, what is it about this person that I can't let go of? What am I supposed to learn? What part of myself am I afraid to confront? Those are hard questions, but they are necessary ones. There's a reason stories throughout history have followed the same narrative structure. The hero must face their greatest fear, confront the thing they've been avoiding, and integrate what they have learned in order to move forward. Your life is no different. If something keeps happening, if a person keeps reappearing, it's because your story isn't finished yet. The resolution hasn't been reached. And you can either keep running from it, pretending that it doesn't matter, or you can face it head on and finally understand what it's trying to teach you. And make no mistake, if you refuse to face it, the pattern will persist. It will manifest in different ways through different people, but the core lesson will remain the same. Life has a way of ensuring that you confront what you need to confront, whether you want to or not. The question is, will you finally pay attention? Will you recognize the pattern for what it is and take responsibility for what it's trying to teach you? Because until you do, this will keep happening. There is a part of you that is far more intelligent than you realize. It operates beneath your conscious awareness, constantly processing information, recognizing patterns, and making connections long before you consciously understand them. This is your subconscious mind, and it knows things before you do. It watches, it listens, and it remembers. It's the reason you sometimes have a gut feeling about something, even when there's no logical explanation. It's the reason certain thoughts or people resurface in your mind unexpectedly, as if they are knocking on the door of your awareness, demanding to be acknowledged. Your subconscious is like a vast reservoir of information, collecting details from every experience, every conversation, and every emotion you have ever encountered. But unlike your conscious mind, which is limited in what it can focus on at any given moment, your subconscious is always working in the background. It notices when something is important, even if you don't. And often when something keeps appearing in your life, whether it's a recurring dream, a familiar type of person, or an unresolved emotion, it's because your subconscious is trying to tell you something. Think about how memory works. You don't always get to choose what you remember. Some things fade away while others stay with you, as vivid as the day they happened. Why is that? It's because your subconscious holds on to what it deems significant. If a person or an experience lingers in your mind long after it should have faded, it's because there's something about it that matters. Something unresolved, something unprocessed, something that, if fully understood, could change the course of your life. But most people ignore these signals. They dismiss them as random thoughts or try to push them away because they are inconvenient or uncomfortable. But ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. In fact, the more you suppress something, the stronger it becomes. That's why people experience anxiety, recurring dreams, or intrusive thoughts. It's not because their minds are broken. It's because their subconscious is trying to communicate something and they aren't listening. If you've ever found yourself thinking about someone unexpectedly, or if certain memories or emotions keep returning despite your efforts to move on, it's not just nostalgia or coincidence. It's your subconscious telling you that something about that person or that experience still holds meaning. And until you acknowledge it, it will keep resurfacing. Carl Jung spoke extensively about the idea that what we repress will manifest in our lives in unexpected ways. If you refuse to confront something directly, it doesn't just go away. It appears in different forms, sometimes in other people, sometimes in repeated life patterns. You might find yourself drawn to the same type of relationship, encountering the same conflicts, or feeling inexplicably pulled toward a particular person over and over again. And it's not because the universe is playing tricks on you, it's because your subconscious is guiding you towards something you need to resolve. This is why certain people seem to have an unshakable presence in our lives. You can try to forget them, you can try to distract yourself, but if there's something unfinished, something meaningful, they will continue to exist in your mind. And that's not weakness, that's not irrational, that's psychological reality. The reason they keep appearing is that your subconscious recognizes that there is more to the story, and you have a choice. You can acknowledge it, try to understand what it means, and grow from it, or you can keep pushing it away, only to find it returning in another form, in another time, through another person. This applies not only to relationships, but to every major decision in life. How many times have you ignored a gut feeling, only to later realize that you should have listened? How many times have you dismissed a thought, only to find it coming back stronger? The truth is, your subconscious often knows what is best for you before your conscious mind catches up. But most people don't trust themselves. They look for external validation, for logical explanations, for reasons that fit neatly into their existing worldview. But real insight, real transformation doesn't always come from logic. It comes from intuition, from recognizing the signals that have been there all along. So what does this mean for your relationships? If someone keeps appearing in your life, if their presence lingers in your mind, if your paths continue to cross, if you can't seem to let them go, ask yourself why. Don't just dismiss it. Don't just assume it's meaningless. Your subconscious doesn't waste energy on things that don't matter. If something or someone persists in your mind, there is a reason for that. Maybe it's unresolved emotions. Maybe it's unfinished business. Maybe it's a lesson you need to learn. Or maybe, just maybe, it's because they are meant to be there. But you won't know unless you stop running from it. You won't understand unless you stop trying to silence your subconscious and instead start listening to what it has been telling you all along. Life is not random. Your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, they all have meaning, and the sooner you start paying attention, the sooner you can begin to understand what your subconscious already knows. Life is a constant balance between chaos and order. These two forces are fundamental to existence itself, and they play an especially profound role in relationships. Order represents structure, stability, and predictability. It's what allows us to function in a world that would otherwise be overwhelming. Chaos, on the other hand, is the unknown, the unpredictable, the force that shakes us out of complacency and demands that we grow. The dynamic tension between these two is what makes a relationship either thrive or collapse. If you only have order, everything becomes rigid, stale, and lifeless. But if you are consumed by chaos, you find yourself lost, directionless, unable to build anything meaningful. The key is to navigate the balance. Now, consider what happens when two people come together. Each person brings with them their own version of order, their habits, their beliefs, their worldview, but they also bring chaos, the unpredictability of their emotions, their past traumas, their subconscious desires. And when two lives collide, there is always disruption. You might think you know yourself, but a relationship will reveal the parts of you that remain hidden. It will pull you into conflicts you didn't anticipate, and it will challenge you in ways you never expected. This is because relationships are not just about companionship or romance. They are about transformation. If you find yourself drawn to someone over and over again, despite the difficulties, despite the challenges, it's because that person represents something beyond just comfort or attraction. They represent a necessary interaction between the chaos and order within you. Maybe they embody something you lack. Perhaps their presence forces you to confront aspects of yourself that you would rather. Maybe they bring you back to an unresolved part of your past that you have yet to integrate. Or maybe they are the catalyst for your growth, the person who through friction and struggle is shaping you into something stronger. This is why real relationships are never easy. If a relationship is too easy, it usually means one of two things. Either the people involved are avoiding necessary conflict, or they are not challenging each other in any meaningful way. True connection always involves some level of struggle because growth is uncomfortable. When two people are drawn to each other again and again, it's because there is an unresolved dynamic at play, a push and pull between chaos and order, between comfort and challenge, between what is known and what remains unknown. Many people misunderstand conflict in relationships. They assume that if there is difficulty, if there are disagreements, it must mean that something is wrong. But this is a dangerous misconception. Conflict is not necessarily a sign of a failing relationship. It is often a sign that something important is happening. It means that two people are confronting the areas where they differ, where their internal structures don't align, and they are either working toward resolution or resisting the growth that the relationship demands. When handled properly, conflict is what allows a relationship to evolve. It forces both people to reassess their assumptions, to adjust their perspectives, and to build something stronger than what existed before. But there is a fine line. Too much chaos and the relationship collapses under the weight of instability. Too much order and it suffocates, becoming a lifeless routine where neither person truly thrives. The key is to recognize when the balance is shifting too far in one direction. If a relationship is filled with nothing but conflict, if it is constantly pulling you into disorder and suffering with no sense of resolution, then it may not be something that is helping you grow, it may be something that is breaking you down. On the other hand, if a relationship is so predictable, so routine, that there is no sense of adventure, no challenge, no real emotional depth, then it is not truly alive. It is simply existing. The most meaningful relationships are those that find a way to integrate both forces. They provide enough order to create a foundation, a sense of trust, a structure upon which a life can be built, but they also leave room for chaos, for exploration, for the unpredictable elements that keep the connection dynamic and real. When a person keeps appearing in your life, despite everything, it is worth asking, what role are they playing in this balance? Are they introducing necessary chaos, pushing you towards something you need to confront, or are they bringing order to an area of your life that has been fragmented? This is why people often find themselves unable to fully let go of someone, even when logic tells them they should. If there is still something unresolved, if the balance between chaos and order has not yet been reconciled, the connection remains. Sometimes this means the relationship is unfinished. It needs to go through one more transformation before it can either stabilize or end. Other times it means that you have yet to learn the lesson it is trying to teach you. Until you do, you will continue to find yourself drawn back into the same dynamic, whether with the same person or with someone else who fills the same role. The question then becomes, are you willing to face what this relationship is trying to reveal? Are you willing to confront the parts of yourself that it exposes? Because if you are not, the cycle will repeat. The chaos will continue to disrupt your life, and the order you try to impose will never feel truly stable. But if you embrace the struggle, if you learn to navigate the balance, you might just find that what keeps bringing you back together is not a mistake or a coincidence. It is an opportunity to grow, to transform, and perhaps to finally build something that lasts. Facing the truth is one of the hardest things a person can do. We often think we want the truth, but when it confronts us, when it demands that we see things as they really are rather than how we wish them to be, we turn away. This is because truth is not comfortable. It forces us to question ourselves, to let go of our illusions, and to confront the reality we have been avoiding. And yet, without truth, there can be no real growth, no real transformation, and no real meaning. In relationships, this is especially critical. People deceive themselves all the time about what they want, what they feel, and what is actually happening between them and another person. They tell themselves, I've moved on, when they haven't. They say, it doesn't matter, when it does. They convince themselves that a connection is meaningless when deep down, this is why certain people remain in our thoughts, why certain relationships refuse to fade away, because the truth about them has not yet been fully acknowledged. But why do we avoid the truth? Because it threatens our sense of control. If you admit that something still matters to you, that a person still affects you, then you also have to admit you are not as detached as you thought. If you acknowledge that you are still drawn to someone, then you have to wrestle with the implications of that, what it means for your past decisions, for your current reality, and for your future, and that is terrifying. Because if you've built a life that depends on ignoring or suppressing something, then facing it means shaking the very foundation you stand on. But here's the thing. Avoiding the truth does not make it disappear. It lingers beneath the surface, influencing your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions in ways you don't even realize. It seeps into your dreams, into your quiet moments, into the spaces between distractions. You may try to push it away, to drown it in busyness or logic, but it will always find a way to make itself known. The longer you refuse to face it, the more it controls you. This is why courage is necessary. To face the truth about a relationship, about your feelings, about what your subconscious is trying to tell you, it takes immense strength. Because sometimes the truth demands change. It demands that you admit that you have been wrong, that you have been afraid, that you have been pretending. It may ask you to revisit painful emotions, to confront regrets, to open doors you thought you had closed forever. But doing this is not weakness, it is the greatest act of strength. Most people would rather stay in the comfort of their illusions than step into the unknown reality that truth brings. But real freedom, real clarity, only comes when you stop running. When you sit with the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is, you take back control. You stop being a prisoner of unresolved emotions, of lingering doubts, of endless what ifs. You see things as they are. And from that place of clarity, you can finally make choices that are real, not ones based on avoidance. So ask yourself, what truth have you been avoiding? What emotions have you been suppressing? What connection have you been trying to ignore even as it continues to pull at you? And are you brave enough to finally face it? Because until you do, it will keep shaping your life, whether you acknowledge it or not. The courage to face the truth is not just about knowing, it is about accepting, integrating, and ultimately finding the freedom that only truth can bring. Love is often spoken about in terms of passion, attraction, or destiny, but at its core, love is responsibility. It is not just something that happens to you, it is something you must choose, nurture, and commit to even when it is difficult. Love is not merely a feeling, it is an act of responsibility toward another person, toward yourself, and toward the relationship you create together. Most people misunderstand love because they see it as something effortless, something that should always feel good. But true love is not about constant happiness. It is about the willingness to face difficulties, to grow together, and to take on the responsibility of caring for another person in a meaningful way. It requires effort, discipline, and sacrifice. If you love someone, you are not just drawn to them in moments of joy. You stand by them in moments of struggle. You recognize that your actions, your words, and your choices impact them, and you take that responsibility seriously. Responsibility in love means choosing to be honest even when dishonesty would be easier. It means being reliable, being present, and being someone your partner can trust, not just in good times, but in moments of uncertainty and hardship. It is easy to love when everything is perfect, but love's true test comes when challenges arise. Do you run at the first sign of difficulty, or do you stay and work through it? Do you avoid difficult conversations, or do you face them with courage? Do you act in a way that prioritizes your own comfort, or do you consider the impact of your actions on the person you claim to love? These questions define the difference between love as a fleeting emotion and love as a deep, meaningful commitment. Taking responsibility in love also means being accountable for your own growth. Many people enter relationships expecting the other person to complete them, to fill a void, to heal their wounds. But this is not love, it is dependence. Real love requires that you take ownership of your own emotional health, your own flaws, and your own development. You cannot expect another person to fix you, nor can you place the burden of your happiness entirely on them. True love is when two people, each working on themselves, come together not out of need, but out of choice. Love as responsibility also extends beyond romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, to family, to the way you interact with the world. Every meaningful connection requires responsibility. The responsibility to be kind, to be present, to treat others with care and respect. If you truly love someone, whether a partner, a friend, or a family member, you do not take them for granted. You do not use them only when it is convenient. You recognize that love is an active process, something that must be continuously maintained, not something that simply exists on its own. Perhaps one of the most difficult aspects of love is responsibility, is understanding that love is not always easy, and it is certainly not always fair. You will love people who do not love you back. You will give your heart to those who may not appreciate it. You will experience heartbreak, disappointment, and moments where love feels more like pain than joy. But even in these moments, responsibility remains. You must take responsibility for how you handle loss, how you treat others in times of heartache, and how you move forward without becoming bitter or closed off. Ultimately, love is the greatest responsibility because it is the most powerful force in human life. It shapes our deepest experiences, our greatest joys, and our most profound sorrows. To love is to open yourself to vulnerability, to accept the risk of pain, and to commit to something greater than yourself. But if you take on that responsibility fully, if you love not just with emotion, but with intention, effort, and integrity, then love becomes something truly extraordinary. It becomes the foundation upon which a meaningful life is built.